Welcome to Swiss Army Sages.
Morning, everyone. How's it going?
Today we're going to be talking about relationships and whether or not they should be 50-50. That's kind of a wide label to use. We're going to be focusing on all different types of relationships that we have in life, but I think that most of the content is going to be directed towards people who are in a committed relationship. What should we say by committed relationship?
I think a committed relationship doesn't have to be romantic. Best friends, maybe not even best friends. Shoot, it can be a friend that I got how to describe this. So I think everyone has had a friend where they're kind of a jerk, they're kind of messed up, they've been your friend for a long time, and somehow you believe that eventually they're going to come around and be the good friend that you want them to be. You can even apply that to this, because what ends up happening is it's not 50-50 and something keeps you in the relationship. Maybe you feel bad for them. Maybe it gives you a sense of like moral supremacy being in that relationship as the one who is morally and ethically superior. That could happen.
So what people are content with varies to a wide degree, but I'm just going to throw a couple situations out there, and maybe some of the listeners can resonate with them. So let's say that we'll do friends first, since we were just talking about friends. Let's say that you have a friend, it's a close friend, so this is someone that you spend more time with than other people, than your other friends and acquaintances. And you're always having to call him to hang out. He's
Right.
not calling you,
Mm-hmm.
or she's not calling you. You have to call them. And then you have to come up with all the ideas of what you're going to do. If you cease to do this, let's say that you're in a situation where you cease to do this, then you guys don't hang out. Maybe instead of hanging out once a week, you guys would end up hanging out once every 2 months.
I think that relationships that are like that usually end up disappearing. So back when I was in my early 20s, I was working at a restaurant called Leatherby's here in Sacramento, and I had made a friend, a female friend, and I was introduced to her friend group, and I became good acquaintances with her friend group, and one of them had invited me somewhere. I said no, I couldn't go, and I think it probably happened again. This is maybe about maybe less than a year, possibly a year after becoming well acquainted with her friend group. And I was invited to go camping by someone from that friend group, and I was sick. But I knew that if I said no, that I would be put at risk of not being invited again, because I'd already said no a few times, and I know how that works. Once someone says no so many times, you don't even ask them, because even hearing that rejection requires a little bit, you take on a little bit of the brunt of it. And why go through it? Why go through thinking about someone, putting your energy into being concerned about how they are, when every time you do, you get rejection? And those relationships usually disappear.
And I think that it's easier to say, screw this, I'm done, when it's a friendship relationship. Let's move to committed relationships that are romantic in nature. So let's say that you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend and you're always texting them, they don't text you back. You have to, let's say you're living together. You're doing most of the cleaning. Maybe your partner has a part-time job or is frequently not working, losing their job, getting another job. You're consistent in your financial contribution and they are not. Let's say that you have to plan all the things that you do. Let's say that you have kids. You're taking care of the kids. And you start to feel, hey, this isn't fair. I'm putting in all the effort. The other person isn't. Now, in a committed relationship, especially if it's a marriage or there's children involved, a person is more likely to stick through that lack of equality and that lack of equal effort in order to make the relationship work, but not without harboring some resentment and not without feeling like maybe there's some injustice there because the scales are not balanced.
Yeah. What I've noticed in relationships like that, especially in relationships that I've been in, there's usually a little bit of projection that goes on. I'm not sure that... So the person who's doing the majority of the work, the majority of not just the physical, monetary resource income, but the person that's also planning events and bringing in non-physical resources, revelry, going a trip to the lake or the fair, planning that kind of stuff too. That's non-physical resources because it revitalizes your soul. In those kinds of relationships, what I've found is that the person who is not doing as much is also very good at convincing the person who is doing a lot that they're doing it wrong, they're going to mess it up, they don't do enough, and that they actually do a lot. And there comes in this, and in those discussions where that's happening, the person will push for a stalemate. If they can't get if they can't make a good point that the person who's doing all the work can't rebuttal and be like, yeah, you can't argue that one. If they can't do that, they'll push for a stalemate. They'll push for no resolution.
If you feel that you're putting in a lot more work than the other person, you're already feeling maybe some resentment, maybe some unfairness, maybe even unjustness. And then they hit you with that.
Oh, it makes it so much worse. Oh, it makes it so much worse. It makes it worse. And what's really weird about it, it makes it worse. And then, let's say that it's a couple who've been dating for 3 or 4 months. Then the person who's doing all the work wants to leave the relationship. And the other person who has pushed for a stalemate in regard to how much each person is putting in is confused. Well, I thought we just had a stalemate. You couldn't argue me. So how come you're leaving? It's like, no. Anyone who does that shouldn't be confused. If a stalemate is reached, if the argument ends up with turning into an argument that isn't even where it started, each person is arguing about something way off on a tangent, and it just ends, nothing was resolved. The initial complaint is still there. No one was convinced of anything. Except for maybe the person that has convinced himself that that they have won the argument, I guess.
Is it okay for someone to believe that relationships don't need to be 50-50?
Yeah. Yeah, I think most people don't want a 50-50 relationship. I think that most people want I think that most people want the other person to do the majority of the work. And not like most 99%, maybe like a 70-30 ratio. 70% of people want to be the person doing less work. 30% of people actually enjoy doing the majority of the work.
Or it might be like the 80-20, like how everything's 80-20.
Is that what they use?
That, yeah.
Oh, my
like
default.
if you're a salesperson.
My default's a 70-30.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then with that in mind, I think the most important thing to begin with is if you feel that you're putting in most of the effort and you have a problem with that, I guess the very first thing that we should do is we should kind of take a look and really see what percentage we actually want.
Yeah, not just that, but
let's say we're not happy. Some of us might say it needs to be exactly 50-50. Some people might say, I don't mind putting in a little bit more. I think that it should be, like you said, 70-30. I do most of the work, but at least I want them to help a little bit. And then for the people that are like, they need to put in more effort. They need to do 70. I need to do 30. I don't think this podcast is for them.
Well,
I wouldn't even know how to make
that's okay.
I wouldn't know how to make a podcast on how to be okay with having to put in equal effort and being upset about it. I don't know how to do that.
So I think that's okay though, because especially if it's recognized. I think what you were talking about earlier, if you're putting in a lot of the work and you're robbed, basically I think what you're describing is you're robbed of the recognition or satisfaction of being able to do that. So there's a few ways this can happen in relationships. Let's say you are putting together a new kitchen table that you ordered from what's the
IKEA,
that's what I was thinking.
Because they don't put it together for you,
right? So you're putting it together, a new kitchen table, and your significant other starts talking about how you're going to do it wrong, you're going to mess it up, or chimes in to tell you exactly how or what to do while you're doing it,
or doesn't like the meal that you prepared,
or doesn't like the meal you prepared
that you took an hour to prepare.
Yeah, complains about it. That kind of robs you of. So it's like you put in the work, and you can't even
say that was work.
You can't say it was work. You can't.
But you know it was work.
You can't feel good about it. Like, I think that's very destructive in a relationship where a person that is actually comfortable doing the most. I think also though there's a lot of people who feel insecure, and they it's like, if I'm putting in 30% and you're putting in 70%, and I'm afraid that you might hold that over my head, I may preemptively rob you of being able to say that you did anything worthwhile.
Yeah, I think that it's important to form the habit of acknowledging the small heroic deeds, the small heroic daily deeds of your significant other.
Okay.
I think it can do so much. And we don't even need to go too much into that.
It can, I think that there's a dynamic that is unspoken. It's probably hard to talk about even in therapy if the two people are going to therapy. And that is the need to have the upper hand in any way that you possibly can. Because I've been in a relationship that I tried my darndest to provide the things that the person needed, and one of them was, I need you to tell me when I'm doing something great. I need to hear the praise for my actions. So I took about probably 2.5 months, 3 months to not give unrealistic praise, not like be like, oh, you're the best, you're the best in the world.
Like patronizing them,
not
whatever.
patronizing. A lot of people want unrealistic praise because they've learned to get their self-esteem from other people. So they needed to give them unrealistic praise because that's what they got from their parents, and so they need it as an adult as well. But so I took the time to observe everything that was happening, everything the person was doing, tell them, and it wasn't an uncommon thing. It was like, oh, hey, yeah, when you did this, it was valuable this way. This is how it was valuable. That was really cool. But in the end, it didn't matter, because they didn't actually want that or need that. In fact, probably they wanted to say that I wasn't doing it, because when I actually did it, it's like, I gotta find something else now. I gotta find something else, because that's not actually what I actually wanted was a situation where you're failing. So now I'm gonna pick something else for you to fail at.
So
worst.
If someone is stating that they need recognition for the things that they do, what they're doing is they're telling you what their expectations are.
Right, but then when you meet those expectations and they're like, oh,
no,
shoot.
Yeah, I don't.
Let me find something else to,
I don't see expectations. Expectations are just that. They're expected. Why would you thank someone for something that you expect? You wouldn't. So that's like, I expect to get all my change back when I go to the store. So I don't need to thank them when they give me my change back.
I see where you're going with this. I think we're delving into unrealistic expectations.
So,
right?
Well, here's the thing. If hypothetical example, if my wife expects me to do the dishes, all the dishes, why would she thank me for doing it if it's an expectation?
Okay. I can easily say not being thanked for things that I do that are cool, I'm actually okay with that. I don't need it. It's nice, but I don't need it.
So for you, it's not an expectation.
I don't need it. I think what really demoralizes me and causes me to lose interest in the value of the relationship is when the things that I'm doing are put under a microscope for any flaw, even if it's not a flaw. Like even sometimes it could be preemptive, where I'm gonna mow the lawn or do some outside work, and in the instruction of how maybe the person would like it to be done, there is like and you're gonna there's this like undertone of you're gonna mess it up. Like, why would you do that? What if I don't? Or this is gonna fail. Oh, this isn't gonna work. Almost like I don't believe in you. That like I don't need the praise, but when that happens, it's like it detracts so much from the work that you do and the satisfaction you have in actually doing it in the future. And then so maybe you stop doing it, you get demoralized, and you don't work as much, you don't do as much, and they're mad about that.
I think it's healthy too, when you're analyzing how you feel about how much each person should put into the relationship. I think it's important to kind of dig a little deeper into why we feel that. Because I think that, well, I know that most of our expectations are based on beliefs that we made a judgment about due to our past experiences.
Or watching our parents.
Yeah. So
that's probably the biggest example, and even for single parents.
Yeah.
You're still watching the parent, and in that situation, you probably have a closer look at yourself, because that's the two people in the relationship, the single parent and the child, unless you have brothers and sisters, which creates a different dynamic. But
I think too, you know, for a large part of history, the father was the financial contributor and the mother was the home contributor. So the father was working and the mother was taking care of the household and the children. And this was even more crystallized into the human consciousness when shows like Leave It to Beaver came out, and then the Brady Bunch. And, you know, it really wasn't until shows like the Cosby Show and things like that where both parents were working. So you kind of already had this unconscious idea that there's a equality in the committed relationship that's even.
You know, I can't say that I remember Leave It to Beaver enough. I've probably only seen a few episodes. You know, it was black and white. It was on TV when I was a kid. It was one of the regular shows that was on, but I don't think I watched it enough to really remember. And remember the narrative that was put out. What I can say is the interpretation of that narrative today is not equality. Now, I don't know that because I didn't see it, but what's put out today is this idea of a subservient housewife and the man is king. You know what? You know which I was gonna say I Love Lucy is kind of that way, but not really, because I Love Lucy was the protagonist in the show. I don't know. Yeah, never mind.
And then
We'll
what
just skip
happens
that one.
when that concept gets turned upside down by a show like Married with Children, where the poor husband is a shoe salesman smelling people's stinky feet to support his family, while his wife's at home watching soap operas and eating bonbons, and the kids are running amok.
Hey, that's not... I mean, these shows, I think what people maybe don't take the time to consider is that these shows are the embodiment of an extreme environment, like the flavor or the way the environment of each individual family at home, your everyday average American, and what that family is like. These shows take different family types and filter out everything except for like the epitome of different types of ways that families run. Married with Children, so that's kind of like the poor shoe salesman and the overindulgent wife, right? But that dynamic is taken to a far extreme and then shown to show a certain dynamic. But that's
the
not
overindulgent wife that never gets laid.
Yeah, and that's
while her husband goes to the nudie bar.
You know what? I think that if any narrative explains to society why men aren't interested in being intimate when the rest of society would say that that's the only thing guys are interested in, not Married with Children. That was completely different, you know?
Yeah. So I think it is important, if you're someone that's struggling with feeling that you're putting in more effort, to kind of take a little bit of time to think about your own family, your mother and father, and what you saw on TV and other people around you, and kind of just analyze why you feel the way that you do. And it's okay to feel that way.
I would imagine that it would be very helpful for a lot of people to sit down and have an honest, having honest discussions is probably the best thing you can do in a relationship. But have an honest discussion about how each person feels about how much work they do in the relationship. And because there are relationships that are not 50-50, that at the start of the relationship it was pretty much understood. You see this with like sugar daddies, sugar mamas, which aren't as common, but they exist. And that's a relationship where both people understand at the beginning of the relationship who has the resources, who is going to be the one providing the resources. And I think as long as that's understood and respected, it can be a fine relationship. You have to understand your position in those kinds of relationships. If I meet, I'm 41, so if I meet like a 58, 63-year-old sugar mama, if I want that to be a solid relationship, I have to understand my position as a subordinate. And as long as I don't try to create a position where I'm not the subordinate, things will be all right. And, things will be okay. I mean, unless the person's sadistic and enjoys watching a person, suffer under their influence, then as long as that's not the case, it'll be an okay relationship. As soon as I start overstepping my position, I deserve more. Why? Why do I deserve more? I went into a relationship because the person had more resources. Why do I deserve more than what they're already giving me, which is more than anyone else has given me, right?
Yeah. I think we talked a little bit about, why we may believe the way we do about our expectations regarding our partner and effort. But do you think that there also could be a completely natural human desire to have equality in relationships?
I think sometimes people have a difficult time looking outside of their abilities, sort of. What I mean by that is I may not necessarily take into consideration how valuable what someone else does. Now, I do. I really try to be fair with that. But I do think that the value of, as a man, I'm not sure exactly where or how devaluating the female, or feminine is probably a better word, feminine aspects of, or what the feminine side brings into a relationship is, I'm not sure where it was devalued. Honestly, if I really take a look, I would say that it comes more from modern feminists, not the old kind that actually appreciated femininity, and they were pushing they were pushing for respect for femininity. They completely understand, hey, what we bring is valuable and we want to be respected for it. Modern feminists, I think I've seen do the most being condescending toward femininity. like the things that women bring into a relationship, like the most like the subservient leave it to beaver housewife. You know, there's a lot of angry feelings towards that dynamic, and that she's not doing the things that are valuable because she's being put into a position where she can't actually be valuable. But I believe that the things that she would bring to the table are valuable, and her husband loved her very much.
I think that you hit a good point that needs to be addressed in this talk about not recognizing what the other person is doing. And I'm going to give you an example. Now, you said that you do it, but I think most people don't. And I think I'm one of those people that don't. And I'll give you an example. So there was a time where my wife and I were both working, and we both pitched in to have someone take care of the children. And since we homeschool, one of us needed to stay home. Mm-hmm. Margaret, my wife, makes more money than me. So it made sense for her to keep working and pushing forward in her career and me to stay home. That was the logical money-based.
That was a logical conclusion.
Yeah.
Or logical solution.
Based on money solely. Not on who's better with children, right? Or anything like that.
Yeah. That's important.
Yeah. So now I'm at home taking care of the children, schooling the children, and taking care of the house. And Margaret is at work working. Now, when I'm at home doing my job and putting in all my effort, I'm not thinking at all about her and the struggles of the day that she's going through at work. And when she's at work, she's not thinking about everything that I'm dealing with while she's at work. So it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind. Now, if she comes home and does nothing but relax for the evening, that's what I see. I see her relaxing. And if she comes home and she sees me not doing anything with the children when she gets home, she doesn't see me doing anything with the house when she's home.
That's what she sees.
That's what she sees. And I think that we have to keep that into consideration too when we're evaluating for ourselves. If our significant other is putting in the effort, we need to recognize that we can't see it and we might not ever think about the things that they do.
Yes, I think that that is a tricky situation. If it's a healthy relationship and you actually want to have, not you, but anyone, if anyone is in that situation where they can say, oh yeah, that applies to me. And both people want a healthy relationship. Because if one person wants it, but the other one says, I can use this as leverage, it's not going to work. If both people want a healthy relationship and they want to have a happier relationship and be more happy with each other, and I'm just making this off the top of my head. And if you're a clinical psychologist, you're like, oh no, we've tried that, it doesn't work. But
we are not professionals.
We're not. Take the time. Do you guys ever come together and have like a parent meeting?
No.
Oh well. Okay, so I think a good idea would be a parent meeting.
We never talk about stuff like that.
A parent meeting where you have decided your job is to sympathize, because even if you can't empathize, that's fine. In fact, I think that's a whole different subject. But empathy and sympathy, we got to talk about that sometime, because they're completely
Yeah, you could say
defined.
I feel you, or I feel sorry for you.
I feel sorry for you, but kind of sympathize with the other person. Like, you're gonna talk about some of the struggles you had during the day, and your wife Margaret's job would be to sympathize with you in that conversation, and then she would talk about the struggles of her day, and your job is to empathize or sympathize with her.
Oh, we do that.
But actually take some, what I mean is like take some time to do it deliberately.
No, we do.
Oh, good.
Every day. So when she comes home from work, that first half hour to hour is completely dedicated to us telling each other about our day and what our struggles were. And if I don't tell her about my struggles with the kids, she'll ask me.
Right. So I guess what I'm saying is make it an exercise.
Yeah, and there's probably a lot of relationships where people don't do that.
Like make it an exercise instead of like, because otherwise it turns into a dump.
Or venting.
A venting dump. You're dumping on her, and then she's going to dump on you. It doesn't have to be that way. If both people go into the situation being like, okay, this is our time. We've already talked about this. This is an exercise. This is a technique that we use, and we're doing it right now. You know, my partner is going to tell me about the struggles of their day, and then I'm going to tell them about the struggles of my day, and that's what we're doing right now. We've made a decision to do this. If it just happens naturally, it can be interpreted any kind of way. And not to say that kind of a technique can't be abused. It can. You know, people can start fabricating. It can turn into a competition about whose day was worse. That can easily happen. And I think when those kinds of things start to happen, the person knows. Someone starts to get a little, this doesn't sound right, you know? So
I'm going to throw out an assertion now that we've gotten into this topic a little bit, and I want you to tell me what you think about it.
Okay, let's hear it.
I'm going to make the proposal that 50-50 relationships are 100% impossible, and all you can really have is a revolving set of circumstances where one person is putting in more effort than the other at a given time.
That's probably the case. I mean, it's pretty difficult to take all the work that's being done, put a value stamp on it, put it in one bag, and put the value stamp of everything the other person's doing in another bag, put them on a scale, and see which one is heavier. That's probably not impossible. I'm not sure if anyone today has the ability to be able to put anything in that kind of a equation.
The analogy that I like to use is that if you look at a grandfather clock and you see the thing swinging back and forth, it's swinging perfectly equally. It's 100% equalized, but it's only in the middle for a split second. And the rest of the time, it's out of balance.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of how we need to look at our relationships. And it could be even like 2 years that you're putting in more effort, and then something changes and they're putting in more effort.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. Like how
that's a good analogy.
Like it might end up being a really crappy expectation if you think that at any given moment it's going to be 50-50. You know?
I believe that synergy is really the key, regardless of whether it's 20-80, 60-40, and regardless of whether a person's putting in 110% and the other person's putting in 110%.
Yeah. So, you know, we've talked about this before, and you mentioned earlier that we're not professionals, which we aren't.
But you know, we don't have to be. Honestly.
Yeah,
and no one has to be.
No, and it. So, you know, the big question I think with beliefs,
as long as people are being honest, you know,
that people are asking is when they have a belief or idea in their mind, they're asking themselves, "Is this true? Is this true?" Like, let's say relationships don't have to be 50-50. You analyze it. Is this true? We're rational beings, right? So, if you were to go into a philosophy class and you were to say, relationships don't have to be 50-50, you're going to get into a philosophical debate that actually doesn't have an answer either way. It's totally subjective. So when you make that kind of assertion in a setting like this, it's easy for people to say, well, that's actually not true. You can't prove that, right? And that is true. You can't prove it. But I think what we're trying to do here is we're not trying to say this is how it is. We're trying to offer perspectives that we have found in our own lives to be able to facilitate peace and joy and harmony and a equilibrium, a pleasant equilibrium to experience and really fully enjoy life.
Well, yeah. So there is a truth. The truth is there. And most people believe things to be true. I believe this to be true. But we don't have regency over truth. I can't make the truth. The truth, I am subject to the truth. My job is to try to figure out the closest I can get to it. That's really what it is. You're just trying to figure out the closest you can get to it.
Yeah, and I'm going to give a quick example because we're going to be doing this in a lot of our podcasts. We're going to be giving ideas that maybe aren't really that popular. A lot of people might not be implementing them.
I'm sure.
And I'm going to give the example of the God argument. So you come to me and you say, God exists.
Okay.
And I say, what's your proof?
What's my proof, right?
And
okay.
You say, well, I've experienced God.
Mm-hmm.
And then I say, well, that's subjective.
Right.
That only applies to you. That doesn't prove anything.
Doesn't prove anything, you're right.
And then you say, you're right. I can't prove it. However, I'm appealing to healthiness. I'm appealing to the healthiness that if I believe in God, then my life has purpose and it helps me be a better person. So even though it might not be provable or true, it helps me have a better life. And I think that's a good place for people to be when they disagree on things.
Yeah, so...
And the other guy could say the same thing, right?
I have a healthier life if I don't believe in God.
Or he could say, I don't want to be accountable to anyone, and there's no proof, and all I care about is what's real. That's what makes me happy, is knowing what's real and what's not real. And since I can't, prove that God is real, then I'm not going to believe any fairy tales.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting example because the two people aren't coming from opposite spectrums. One person is saying God is real, and the other person is saying, how do you know?
Yeah.
It's different if the other person's saying God isn't real.
But even then, someone could say, God isn't real because if God was real, well, okay, you know what? I'm not even going to say that.
My
because
point
otherwise it could really turn into like a real long philosophical discussion about the nature of the universe.
My point is one's coming from an argument of saying that God is real, and the other person is saying, well, how do you know? Mm-hmm. But I think in your example, both people end up saying, well, both of us don't know, but I'm going to go with God is real, and I'm going to go with God is possibly not.
Do you think that it's unhealthy or healthy to say relationships don't have to be 50-50?
Yeah.
And I'm willing to be the person that puts in more work.
I think, well, yes, but so many things come into play when it comes to leverage. First of all, there's a lot of societal pressure for things to be 50-50. I think that puts a lot of insecurity complexes on people who aren't putting in as much, because they might be going with the narrative. They might believe that the other person believes it should be 50-50, and so there's this insecurity thing, and there's a constant manipulation of leverage to verbally and psychologically convince the other person that they're not doing as much. So that's a problem. And there's there's an insecurity because there's a fear. If I go into a relationship, and I've done it plenty of times, to say I don't mind doing most of the work, I don't mind that. It's like there's still this insecurity and fear that at some point I'm going to hold it over the person's head. And as long as the person never admits to who's doing more work, or as long as the person hasn't taken opportunities to devalue the work that's being done, there's a fear that it's going to be held over their head. Hey, we both agree that I do more. I'm in a position of superiority. I'm your superior, I'm my subordinate, and I can mistreat you. There's a fear that that's going to happen. It's divisive. It's destructive. It prevents solid relationships. It prevents productive relationships. But the only place you don't see that is in power couples, and everyone wants to be a power couple. Everyone wants to be in a power couple relationship. Fine. That's fine. But before you can do that, you have to be a person that can be the counterpart to a power couple relationship. If I want to be in a power couple relationship, but I do not allow the environment for a power couple relationship, I will never, ever be in a power couple relationship. It doesn't matter who I'm with. It doesn't matter. I can be with the most resilient, competent person, but if I do not let the environment for that relationship thrive, it won't be a power couple relationship. I will never be in that situation if I do not allow for the environment to exist. So, yeah.
I think that the reason that power couple relationships are rare is because a power couple relationship is where, first of all, there's constant common goals being set in the relationship. They're constantly setting goals together, right, that they're both working on, and both people are like extremely productive doers. And then you have all the synergy aspects where the personality aspects mesh very well.
I don't think that both people have to be doers. I think if one person is a cultivator
or a planner,
just a cultivator, let's say that my significant other is the doer, my job to function in a power couple relationship would be to set that person up to be able to do the things that she needs to do. I need to boost her morale, encourage her, let her know that she has my support, let her know that if she goes out to do the thing, that she got the goal, if she hits a bump in the road or if she's defeated, that she can come to me and I will revitalize her so that she can go out and do more again. That can be a power couple relationship, because I am functioning in my position where I am setting, you know what, I'll use the example of the military. When I was in basic training, I was not infantry, but I heard this more than once. There's the infantry. Every other job in the military is support. All of us are here to support the infantry. That is our job. You know, they're the doers. The infantry is the doers. Our job is to support them. We're not, you know, and so you can take that principle and apply it to a relationship.
Okay. Before we talk more about developing a belief system to where it's okay if things are unequal, if that's something that would work, let's talk about goals real quick, because I think that's important too. When you have a lofty goal in a relationship, the chances of reaching that goal is going to be compounded if both people are on board, if both people set it, if both people visualize it, work on it. There's more of a chance it's going to happen. Now, how do you function in a relationship, in a committed relationship especially, if you guys are setting goals, but then after you set the goal, you're the only one doing the work?
I think expectations probably come into this again, especially if the work is divvied up. If it's like, if I decide that I am going to, we have a goal, I'll do this and you're going to do that. And it's one of the real problems is once with this going south is that once the commitment to engage and see the goal through has been made and work has been done, the person that's the most committed is also going to be the one that's willing to pick up the slack to see it through. So, and that might be okay at first, but if the vision of the goal coming to fruition starts to deteriorate, that's when things start getting a little haywire, so I think that probably needs to be addressed at the start, and again, there's all kinds of things that happen in relationships: sabotage, subterfuge, all kinds of things that could happen from either person to secretly make sure that the goal doesn't come to fruition. That those things can always happen, and because that's another reason why these aren't answers. Oh, if you just do these things, then you'll have a great relationship. All of these things can be sabotaged and manipulated and leveraged. All of them.
So I'm going to speak directly to the people now that are experiencing discomfort, anger, depression, anxiety, any strong negative feelings because they feel like they're doing so much and their partner is doing so little. I'm just going to be out front with it. There's several options that you have.
Get out of the relationship.
One, get out of the relationship.
That's the best option, honestly.
Now, if you're unwilling to do that because perhaps you guys are married, you've made a commitment, a religious commitment or a governmental commitment. To some people, marriage is bound by God or by their religion.
Oh, yeah.
So they're more likely to stick through really terrible things.
My whole take on that one right there, just real quick, is that the marriage is bound by the wedding vows.
Yeah.
Once people don't take the wedding vows seriously. I really don't believe that.
Okay.
Because as soon as one of those vows are broken, that contract is void.
No,
and
yeah.
Well, you slept with this other person. Well, in the wedding vows, you also said honor and respect. That was broken like 3 weeks in.
Well, it's more than honor and respect. You promised to be.
Well, yeah.
You promised fidelity.
Right, but what I'm saying is, let's say that infidelity didn't happen, and every other vow was broken. But yeah. I didn't break the only one that anyone actually takes seriously. It's like, dude, why did you? Those were vows.
Yeah.
Those were wedding vows.
Yeah. Okay.
What the freak?
Yeah. So you can get out of the relationship, or you can change your beliefs, or you can stay in the relationship and continue to be miserable. Those are your three choices.
Try to rationalize your way into it. Try to make the uncomfortable shape that you find yourself in as comfortable as you possibly can. Yeah.
So I want to talk, since the only one that really needs to be expanded upon, I want to talk about changing your belief. And I want to offer a little bit of ammunition for that. And that is the word sacrifice.
Okay.
Sacrifice.
I'm listening.
Sacrifice can have a good or it can have a bad connotation based on your own belief system. And one thing that really stuck with me that I heard Jordan Peterson say, he said, in life, you will be forced to make sacrifices. The good part is that you get to choose what those sacrifices are and own them. Now, is that true or is it not? I don't know, but I'm gonna use the rationality of healthiness to apply that to our lives. Let's say that I grew up with the belief that things should be relatively equal, and in my own experience, they're not. I can take that and say, hey, I do way more than the other person. It's not fair, but I am going to use this area of my life to sacrifice my own expectations and my beliefs in order to have peace. What do you think about that?
This is what I think about that when it comes to sacrifice, and you get to choose what it is. So when I've heard Jordan Peterson talk about sacrifice, he talks about it in one fashion, and the fashion is, I make the sacrifice, then I get the reward of it. Now that can come into, and I guess the next realm of that, which is right next to that one, because I would say there's three realms of that kind of a sacrifice, of the fashion of sacrifice. I make the sacrifice, I reap the benefit. I make the sacrifice, the relationship reaps the benefit, meaning both people get the benefit of the sacrifice. I make the sacrifice, I don't get the benefit, the relationship doesn't get the benefit, my significant other does. That, when it comes to sacrifice, put those into the equation. Seriously.
Okay.
You ask yourself, what am I getting out of this sacrifice? And if it's, my significant other isn't, cracking the whip as often, it's like, whoa.
What about people that sacrifice their lives for humanity? What are they getting out of it?
Yeah, I think that's incredibly noble, first of all. And I think the only people that can actually do that, or actually will do that, are people who believe that there is something greater than themselves. That believe that there is something greater. And here's the thing about that. Here's where thank you for asking, because the relationship should be greater than both people. The relationship should be greater than you or the other person. That institution, just like, you give your life for your country because the institution of that country is greater than the individual, and the individual has to believe that. But in a relationship, if the sacrifice you're making, the benefit of it is the other person, who's really making the choice? I don't think most people would make a sacrifice that's not benefiting the relationship, but it's benefiting the individual, the other individual in the relationship. I don't believe there are very many people, unless you believe the other person is greater than yourself, unless you hold them in a higher regard than yourself, and you love them, and you respect them, and you admire them, and you're like, I'm making this sacrifice because they need to be able to thrive, because they are so much, because they do so much. Their worth, the way they impact the world, the way they impact our sphere of influence is so valuable that I must sacrifice this for them. That's the only way. Otherwise, otherwise the balance starts to get out of place. And you can put it in anytime you're making a sacrifice, put into the equation, what is the reward? And who or what is the primary beneficiary? That's important.
I mean, to me, if there's a reward, it's not really sacrifice.
No, there's always a reward for sacrifice.
To me, though, I mean, I would say there's always an effect of that action. But to me, there's sacrifice and there's give and take.
Sacrifice is...
so I give this and I'll get that. But to me, a sacrifice is I give this and I get nothing.
I don't know that I've heard of sacrifice used in that fashion ever.
Well, what would you call a sacrifice where you get nothing in return?
So, okay.
Like, I'll give you an example. It's better to give than it is to receive.
Yeah, you get the gift of giving. I understand. Yeah. Okay, so being...
And then another not so popular one that we can add is a relationship is where you go to give, not where you go to get.
Okay.
Things like that.
Okay.
How does that apply to sacrifice?
So you'd say that's not sacrifice?
No, I'd say both of those are sacrifice.
Okay.
I would say if I sacrifice this, like, I mean, you could just do it with like helping out a homeless person, right? You give him money. It doesn't make it. You don't get anything from it except for the satisfaction that you gave it. That's it. Mm-hmm. But it's actually making his life better, not yours.
Right. So he's the beneficiary.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why I say there's three different kinds. There's three different realms of sacrifice. There's three different fashions. So I think the only way that that you could sacrifice something where nothing was given in return is like maybe you slaved for 10 years, give up your social life, give up your social media life, because I get trapped in YouTube holes, right? Where I click on one video and the next, then it's 4 a.m. and I'm like, oh my God, I gotta get up soon. So give up all that and put your nose to the grindstone, and 10 years later you're a millionaire or a billionaire, whatever. And one day, secretly, you sneak out to the active volcano, withdraw all of your money from the bank, dump it all in the volcano, don't tell anyone, and then proceed to do it all over again. Because if you say, I'm not going to learn anything from my experience, or maybe forget what you did to get to where you are, something like that, I'm not even sure if that can even really fit into the category of not getting anything in return. Sacrifice, in the biblical sacrifices, you earn favor with God. You're sacrificing something, but I think the principle is more important than actually like sacrificing animals and things like that.
Well, yeah, if you think about it, I sacrificed the lamb to God, right? Well, actually, the lamb gave the ultimate sacrifice.
Yeah. Right.
Not you.
Right.
Right. And in that way, like, sacrifice is like almost sadistic.
But and that comes into where Jordan Peterson is saying you get to choose. So the lamb didn't get to choose. The lamb didn't make any sacrifice.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a choice.
And so, you're earning favor with God. You could say that is a sacrifice to build the relationship. It's not really benefiting God. What does God need with the lamb, But you're sacrificing it for the reward of a stronger relationship. You're giving for the reward of a stronger relationship. If you're giving and the relationship isn't becoming stronger, for example, being robbed of the gift of giving, there's an easy way, and people do it all the time. I want to give this to you. No. Come on, I really want to. No, please, I can't take that from you. I insist. you've just robbed them of the gift of giving. Once they insist, the gift of giving isn't on the table anymore. Now it's a sacrifice for the benefit of the individual.
That's why
it's not
I always,
a sacrifice for the benefit of the relationship anymore.
That's why I always accept gifts.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to rob people of that.
Right. Like I do a quick evaluation. I might say no once, not twice, unless I believe that the person is going to use it as leverage. For example, I was camping one time, and one of my friend's dads was like, hey, go ahead and use my grill, because I was going to cook over the fire. I didn't have a grill. I was young, didn't have any camping gear. I was going to cook over the fire, and he was like, hey, go ahead, you can use my grill. And so I was like, oh, cool, thanks. And I was using it, and it was taking a while. I wasn't great at cooking without like a stove at that time. And he started talking shit while I was doing it, and paid attention to that. Well, the next day I was like, screw that, I'm not going to take anything from this guy. Well, the next morning I was cooking breakfast, and I was like, I'm just going to put my griddle on the coals of the fire and cook my breakfast. And he was like, dude, come on, you can use my grill. And I was like, no. And he's like, come on, man, you can use my grill. No, because that's not, no, because that's not, it's not, there was no giving and taking. Yeah. It was like, I am going to do this and then hold it over your head.
Yeah. So there's a lot to think about there, about the sacrifice part. And I guess it really its real determination is the definition that you're using. I just really feel like I need to put this out there, so I'm going to say it. I was struggling with everything that we're talking about right now, especially sacrifice. And I think I might have told you about this. I was meditating at the park, and I started contemplating the sun. And I thought, what does the sun do? It gives life to the entire planet with no thanks, and its only reward is its eventual death. Now, for people who are very solely like unspiritual, they're all about reality, they're all about the physical realm, they're going to have a lot of arguments about that.
Right, and that's fine.
Because they're going to say the sun's just a planet, right?
Or a spatial body, right? Yeah.
Right. And then I think about nature, and I think about how every living thing dies so humans can live, or most living things die so humans can live.
And you could say that about other animals too.
Yeah.
Like there's, yeah.
So animals give their life, plants give their life.
Or the death of one. I
guess fruit trees don't necessarily die, but they eventually do. But they don't die by us eating their fruit, right?
I've recently read an article. Well, we can go. I want to finish your thought. Yeah.
So, I thought about that, and I was like, how come we as humans can't be like the sun, where we give just to give, and we don't need any thanks, and our only reward is our eventual death?
So, since we're not talking about just the physical sciencey aspect, and we're talking more about a spiritual aspect. In spirituality, most spiritual realms, most what's the one where there's only one God? Monolithic?
Monotheistic.
Most non-monolithic monotheistic religions believe in a spirit of, and the sun would be like you have the sun god, right? Because it has refined its essence, or maybe it was there from the start.
A lot of theories.
To become the sun, abandoning all other aspects of the human condition. I'll call it the human condition, but it really is the condition of existence, to become that. But we're not there. We can't do that because we haven't abandoned, and I don't know that I want to be like the sun.
Yeah, definitely have free choice, right?
Yeah, and so it's like, why can't we be like the sun? Well, if the sun had taken on a spirit of darkness in its transcendence, there would be conflict within it. It might not be okay with giving heat and light, which, I mean, it also gives death if you're in the desert.
Damn straight.
But it might not be content with its existence if it had, through its transcendence, kept conflicting energies and spirits. We have we have a culmination of lots of different energies within us that are in conflict with each other. And then, I mean, for me, the goal is to get those energies within me to synergize, to work together. And if they can't work together, or be friends. If they can't be friends, at least work together. So
in conclusion, and I want you to tell me what you think, or put in your advice, because I think that this is a big issue with a lot of relationships that people have. If things not being equal or being 50-50 is causing you suffering, get out.
That's my advice.
Or adopt the belief, which people do believe it, and it's fine. Adopt the belief that it's okay to give more than your partner.
Yeah.
If you can. I'm not saying you can.
Well,
but beliefs can change. We can change our beliefs.
Can you?
Yeah.
Well, okay. Can you adopt beliefs that go against your nature? Or do you have to trick yourself into saying that you believe them? Do you have to lie to yourself?
No, I think that the whole goal of humanity is to go against your nature.
I guess what I'm saying is, do you discover your beliefs? Do we discover our beliefs? Our beliefs have always been there, but we discover them by understanding better who we are.
I think that our beliefs are formed through experience. And then when our beliefs, I think they're formed by experience, and then those beliefs form our expectations. And then when our expectations are not met is when we suffer. But we're really suffering because of the belief that had formed the expectations, and now that the expectations aren't met.
Right.
So, like an example, if you don't expect your partner to put in 50-50, then you're not going to be upset when they don't.
Mm-hmm.
But that is based on a belief.
Sure. So
if you change your belief, the expectation changes, and then you don't suffer when the expectation isn't met that you had before.
So, okay. Growing up as a teenager in the mid 90s to mid O's. No, I guess it was just the 90s. Growing up as a teenager in the 90s, I went with the narrative, you can even say it was a belief, that things should be 50-50. As I got older and started to discover who I am, it wasn't a hard one to be like, oh, no, I don't believe that. I believe that it's okay for it to not be 50-50. I don't mind doing the work. That was easy. Discovering who I am actually cemented what I actually believe. So if I believed that the other person should be doing more of the work, I think it'd be very difficult. I would think I would have to lie to myself to adopt a belief that it's okay for me to give more. it would be a lot easier for me to continue to believe that the other person should give more and find a person who was willing to give more and be in a relationship like that than have to lie to myself and say that I actually believe that I should give more.
Yeah, and like, I think that our beliefs, some of them are way more deeply rooted than others. And there are some that maybe in this lifetime are impossible to change. There's some beliefs that we have that are impossible to change.
Okay.
So that needs to come into consideration with something like this. But I think a lot of people don't realize that just because you believe something doesn't mean it's real.
Sometimes there's a struggle.
Or just because you believe something doesn't make it true.
Sometimes there's a struggle to make the other person the person that's right for you. You know, if the person is not right for you, if you don't synergize well, if you have a difficult time coming together and celebrating your successes together, and you start to have to adopt beliefs that go against your natural environment that you would thrive in. Sometimes I feel what I've seen is a push to get the other person to conform to the environment that you would thrive in. And then it's a constant struggle for the rest of the relationship. So I think in those relationships, it's probably better to not be in them. And sometimes it's hard to get out of them, especially if the other person is trying to get you to conform to the person that they would thrive with, but it's not you. And so when you try to leave, and all of a sudden there's like a you can't leave attitude. They would never say that. Maybe in some cases, yes, but usually that's not how it comes out. Usually it's they'll play on your moral ethics and make you feel bad about leaving. So it's not like you're leaving because you're not like you're staying because you want to. You're staying because you're bound by your moral ethics. That's rough. It's a rough situation to be in. I'm sorry for anyone who's going through that. It's not easy.
All right. Well, that was pretty heavy duty.
Yeah.
A lot to think about there. We thank you for joining us. And, we're a community here at Swiss Army Sages, so we want to hear from you in the comments. And Please. We want to open this up to more insight than just yours and mine, of course.
Right, absolutely.
Please like and
subscribe.
Follow us.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. It helps us reach more people, and we would really appreciate that.
Yep.
So thank you again for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Take it easy, guys.
It's a good life, the life, the life, the life, life, the life, the life, life. Oh, it's a good life, the life, the life, the life, life, the life, the life, life. Oh, it's a good life, the life, the life, the life, life, the life, the life, life.